Chapter 14. Sig West clenched his teeth in agony as another brand seared the flesh on his back. As the heat finished transferring into his skin, the leader handed the brand to one of the other acolytes in the room. "You're going to a lot of trouble for such a little thing," said the leader. Sig grinned, but before he could say anything, a white-cloaked acolyte rushed into the room. "There's been an incident," shouted the acolyte. "Get out and deal with it," shouted the leader. The acolyte left, and the sound of boots stomping through the halls echoed through the room. "Trouble with your security?" asked Sig with a smile. "How kind of you to worry about us," said the leader, "but it would be much smarter to worry about how I can get the key of origins." One of the red-cloaked acolytes in the room handed the leader another brand. The leader positioned the symbol carefully on Sig's back. This symbol, when burned, would complete a ring of rune-shaped brands on Sig's back. Sig knew based on the position of the cool metal on his back, but he could not move. He clenched his fists as he felt the metal rapidly heat up to be uncomfortable and then practically unbearable. The sizzle of his skin seemed louder than the wind whistling through the doors that had swung open as armed acolytes rushed into the cold darkness. In spite of the intense pain, his thoughts wandered to a memory that brought a smile to his face. "The outer ring is complete," said the leader sadistically. "You were probably already told this, but if you did not know, these brands are capable of doing more than persuasion. This is the method we use to sacrifice humans to the fire demon. There are 3 rings, and once they are complete, the power of the demon will boil your blood inside you." The leader grabbed a bunch of Sig's hair and pulled his head back, then whispered in his ear, "You will serve us one way or the other, either by providing us the location of the key of origins, or by appeasing the fire demon so that he feeds our demon keys." "How thoughtful of you to let me know," said Sig with a grin. The leader threw Sig's head down by the hair he had grabbed and scowled. After a moment, he relaxed in his posture. "You know," said the leader as he grabbed a new brand, "I would prefer that you remain alive. You have more fire in you than most of the acolytes." Sig laughed. "If you think I'm great," said Sig, "just wait until you meet our snow leopard." "You have a pet," said the leader as he positioned the metal on Sig's back and heated it up with his demon key. "How fascinating." "She's no pet," said Sig as he winced, "but it sounds like you'll find out soon enough." "Even if your friends have come to this fortress," said the leader as he obtained another brand, "you overestimate their odds." "I don't think so," said Sig as his flesh sizzled again. "If you did not know, the reason I didn't receive all your brands before was not because I talked. It was because of the snow leopard." Even considering the pain, his memories returned to the forefront of his consciousness, and he recalled the detail that had led him to this place before. He had been younger, but no less brazen. Daniel Young had been curious about the reports of animal attacks on demon worshippers in the south. Of course, Sig had not cared too much that demon worshippers were being attacked, and thought of it as poetic justice. Daniel had convinced him it was worth a look when he explained that animal claws did not make the marks they saw on the corpses of fire demon worshippers. Daniel believed they needed to do something to stop the unnecessary loss of life. Sig was more interested in recruiting someone that was obviously skilled and unafraid of demon worshippers to help in his efforts to find the divine keys. The cold and dark in the south seemed an odd place for demon worshippers, and Sig had wondered what made them go there. On the other hand, he decided that those capable of generating their own heat might be able to handle it more than even the augments that prided themselves in their ability to survive. The partly ruined walls of the ice fortress had been so impressive to him, but it was clear that these defenses had not helped the inhabitants survive the crushing siege of the fire demon worshippers. Drifts of snow had heaped up inside the ruined walls and dusted the several buildings scattered about the compound. Acolytes roamed the area with flamethrowers, and against Daniel's protests, he had easily killed the cloaked guards. After making their way toward the center of the compound, they spotted a group of machine-gun-armed guards in thick white cloaks. They appeared to be surrounding a tower and were shouting at one another and pointing to a window toward the top. Sig squinted to look at the window and caught a brief sight of a white figure. The brief appearance did not go unnoticed by the acolytes below, and they responded with a steady stream of gunfire toward the window. "The so-called snow leopard must be up there," said Daniel. "They're trying to kill him." Sig pulled out a pair of pistols and smiled. Daniel scowled. "What?" asked Sig. "I don't mean for you to kill all of them," said Daniel. "We're supposed to respect life." "I'll try," said Sig as he turned and fired. One of the acolytes slumped down into the snow. "Sig!" said Daniel angrily. "Sorry," said Sig as he ran toward the group and fired several more rounds. Another pair of them slumped to the ground before the acolytes turned their attention toward Sig. He rushed toward an icy boulder that had once been bathed in fire and hurled toward a now broken section of the ice fortress wall. Sig smiled as the submachine guns kicked up puffs of snow a good deal in front of him. He had correctly estimated the range of his opponent's weapons. He peeked around the boulder to see the group split up. Some of the group stayed behind to keep the snow leopard pinned in the tower. Most of the others rushed toward his position. "Idiots," said Sig with a smile. He caught a glimpse of the small white-cloaked figure in the tower before machine gun fire from below forced it to take cover. Sig smiled widely. He took aim with one of his pistols, but instead of picking off the members of the group rushing toward him, he hit one of the group below the tower, causing him to slump into the snow, leaving only 3 pinning the snow leopard in. Machine gun fire from the larger group approaching him became more accurate, and Sig took cover behind the boulder. He began counting out loud with a smile on his face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he started. The sound of snow crunching beneath the boots of his opponents made him nod as if he had been the one directing them and was giving them approval for the course of action they took. 10, 11, 12, 13, he continued. He reached into his long coat and removed a grenade. He pulled the pin and lobbed it over the boulder. A few seconds later, the blast sent snow, shrapnel, and pieces of his opponents into the air, and a gruesome rain of these ingredients fell to the cold ground. He rushed around the boulder with his weapons drawn and eliminated the 2 guards that were still standing. He took aim at the remaining 3 guards and picked off another with his gun. "Snow leopard!" he shouted. The white figure slowly appeared from the window in the tower. Sig managed to hit another guard, leaving only 1 standing. The final guard swung his gun back and forth indecisively. He wanted both targets, but knew he would probably have to choose. He holstered it. Sig rushed closer, but the clip in his pistol had been emptied. He holstered it and went for his second sidearm. His delay helped the guard make his decision. A loud series of machine gun rounds went off. Most of the bullets kicked up small puffs of snow around Sig, but one of them hit his leg, and the momentum he had accumulated as he was rushing toward the guard sent him crashing face first into the snow. The white-cloaked guard began slowly approaching Sig. Sig lifted his head and watched the snow leopard nimbly hop down on small outcroppings of ice and stone, and then turned to look at him in confusion before disappearing into the darkness. The moment of hesitation revealed something that Sig had not expected. The snow leopard was not a large, gruff survivalist man, as Sig had guessed. It was a young girl, with wide eyes, quick reflexes, and a long, dark ponytail. The irony that so many fire demon worshippers had fallen to a little girl caused Sig to laugh loudly. Only the swift motion of the butt of the gun in the guard's hands cut his laughter short. When Sig had awoken, he remembered being in a chamber with a fireplace that was very similar to the one in which he was currently bound, and a red-cloaked man was similarly pressing hot brands onto his back. He winced in pain as his flesh sizzled. He clenched his teeth as his tormentor talked about how, when the seals were complete on the back, The power of the fire demon would cause his blood to boil, making him a human sacrifice to help the fire demon worshippers. He had struggled to free himself from the bonds with which he had been tied, but without success. He was firmly tied. He knew that he could not count on Daniel to mount an assault. He had felt a bit of despair creep into his heart as he thought about his quest for the divine keys slipping from his fingers before he had even seen one of them. He shook his head as he felt his flesh burn again. He remembered that he had liberated the snow leopard, and he thought that perhaps she would meet Daniel Young and be persuaded to take up the cause. The courage to resist was a rare thing in the world that survived the Destroyer's wrath, but the young girl who slew dozens of fire demon worshippers definitely had it. As he began to take courage for the future, Sig was suddenly surprised as the door flung open. 3 red-cloaked acolytes rushed in and attempted to push the door closed, but something kicked it open and knocked them onto the floor. "What is this?" shouted the acolyte that had been torturing Sig. His question was answered by a white figure with a dark ponytail rushing in. She had a pair of swords that she used to slice through the fleeing acolytes as she spun and dodged their attacks. Her fluid motions impressed Sig, and his mouth hung open as he watched her dispatch acolytes with ease. In a few moments they were all dead, but she was not done. Her blue eyes were filled with fury. She grabbed the face of one of the acolytes and carefully sliced it to make it appear as though a leopard had clawed it. "Snow leopard," whispered Sig. She ignored him as she repeated the claw marking on the face of another acolyte. "Snow leopard," he whispered again. She continued slicing the faces of the other corpses before she turned to face Sig. "Who are you?" she demanded coldly. "I'm Sig West," said Sig with a wide smile. "What are you doing here, Sig West?" she demanded. "Looking for you," he said. "I was hoping to recruit you." "You don't look very impressive right now," she observed coldly. Sig laughed heartily. "No, I don't suppose I do," he said at last. Though she tried to remain cold and uncaring, Sig's laugh brought a bit of a smile to her face. She released the bonds on Sig's wrists, but then backed up defensively as he unfastened the bonds on his ankles. He picked up his long dark coat that had been tossed on the ground and put it over his shirt, which had been torn so that his back was exposed. The burned skin was still tender, and Sig winced at the pain, but quickly adjusted. "What is your name?" asked Sig. The girl paused as if considering the risks of revealing that information. After a few moments, she must have concluded he could know her name. "Kirana Sepharvaim," she said. "Well, Kirana Sepharvaim," said Sig with a smile, "here's a more impressive recruitment speech. How would you like a more reliable source of food and supplies?" "That's not more impressive," said Kirana coldly, "especially since you don't know how I get my food and supplies." "You steal them from the fire demon worshippers," said Sig. Kirana scowled at how easily he had guessed the source of her sustenance. "Well, where do you get yours?" demanded Kirana. "We steal ours from slavers, mostly," said Sig with a smile. "Slavers?" asked Kirana. It was clear she had never heard the term. "How is that better than what I do?" "It's not," admitted Sig. "It's just part of my recruitment speech." Sig began laughing. After a few moments, Kirana smiled again. "The truth is, I don't have a lot to offer," said Sig, "but I am doing something important." His voice grew more solemn. "What is that?" asked Kirana. "Have you ever heard of the divine keys?" asked Sig. Her eyes grew wide. She nodded slowly. Sig smiled genuinely. "They exist," affirmed Sig, "and I intend to find them." "I still want to hunt demon worshippers," said Kirana. "Why hunt demon worshippers when we could hunt the demons themselves?" asked Sig. Kirana had obviously never considered this option. After thinking for several more moments, she nodded. "All right, Sig West," she said. "Your recruitment speech was more impressive than I thought it would be." Sig laughed as the two of them left the room. The memory of the first time he met Kirana had taken his mind off of the pain of the searing metal on his back. The sound of acolytes rushing through the doors outside and frantically shouting gave him comfort. He knew that it was not an ordinary disturbance caused by a rival group of demon worshippers or augments that were causing his captor's grief. It was the snow leopard and her band of demon hunters.